Naruto is an anime known for its billions of filler episodes that tank the pacing like none other, which, let's be real, is extremely annoying. However, there are some filler scenes and fights that many people don't even realize are filler and are not in the manga and the original story. Fight scenes that when you're watching don't really feel out of place, like Mecha Naruto or Naruto fighting against ostriches. The anime studio made them so that you feel like, okay, the story is going along and this is part of the story. However, they are not that important, or they were skipped over in the manga, they were off screen or something like that. So today we're going to be talking about 10 of these fights that you think are canon, however, they are actually filler, they are not in the manga. And we're going to do it in chronological order because I just find it more neat. Starting off with Iruka versus Team 7. Maybe you don't even remember this fight, however, before the Chunin exams, Kakashi recommends his team for the third Hokage so that it can go into the Chunin exams, and Iruka's like, what? No, they're too young, Naruto's not ready? What are you doing, Kakashi? And Kakashi's like, no bro, they're ready. I am the sensei now, you're no longer in charge of them, and Iruka's pissed. In the manga, it's resolved in a conversation. Kakashi just puts Iruka back in his place. However, in the anime, of course, they have to do something a little bit extra to pad the runtime a little bit. And Iruka does some tests on Team 7. He fights against Sasuke, he kidnaps Konohamaru so that Naruto has to rescue him, he tries to put Sakura under a genjutsu, and then when Team 7 quote-unquote passes those tests, Iruka goes back to Kakashi and is like, yeah, they're doing pretty good, I guess they can go to the Chunin exams. Which, to be honest, this is not a terrible addition. Sure, it tanks the pacing a little bit, but I can overlook that because it makes sense when later in the Chunin exams, Iruka is the chosen sensei to be the one to knock them out in case they open the scrolls during the second trial of the Chunin exams in the Forest of Death. So I guess it was fine the way it was. Nothing great, but nothing necessarily important as well. One could say Sakura had some development there, but she also had the same development in the manga, just not in the way it happened in the anime. Now let's move on to the second fight, which is going to be Temari versus Tenten. This is a very infamous fight because Tenten is absolutely fodderized by Temari, which is not a surprise. Tenten never wins a fight in the entire series except against Kakuzu in the war, because Kakuzu is absolute fodder. And you may be saying, what? They didn't fight even in the manga? What are you talking about? They were part of the Chunin exams prelims. Of course they fought. And yes, technically you would be right. However, their fight in the manga is completely skipped over and it happens off screen. The only thing you see of their fight in the manga is the final shot of Tenten just hanging on Temari's fan unconscious, completely fodderized, as Temari had suffered absolutely no injuries. The whole Temari versus Tenten fight, except for that final shot, is completely made up for the anime. Tenten tosses a billion, trillion, quadrillion, whatever, kunais and shurikens against Temari, and Temari literally just stands there and does nothing. Her wind just blocks them and tosses them out of the way. Tenten even uses those weird dragons with those scrolls, but well, they don't work out so great for her. And there's even some hype built in the anime because Guy says, oh my god, Tenten is actually using those in the prelims? I thought she was gonna save those for the finals! Oh no! Damn, this Temari girl's impressive! Yeah, no, Tenten didn't score a single hit on Temari, as per usual. And that fight's pretty damn boring in the anime, so yeah, that's the reason why it was skipped over in the manga, because the only conclusion to that fight is that Tenten loses to Temari, and there was no reason to really make it long. It's actually more impactful in the manga because we just see the final panel of Tenten being fodderized. So it's a surprise. Oh, okay, the Temari girl's powerful. Putting the entire fight in the anime tanks the pacing. It's not a good idea, but they did it, so it's whatever, you know. And honestly, you think that fight's part of the manga because, well, it's Tenten and Temari fighting. They're supposed to fight in the prelims of the Chunin exam, so yeah, we're watching the fight. It's just a very interesting fight, and the reason why is because, well, it's not in the manga, it's unnecessary. The third fight of this list, oddly enough, involves Temari as well, and it is Temari versus Sasuke in, well, the Konoha Crush arc, I guess. I kind of combine that arc with the Chunin exams. To me, the Konoha Crush arc is a climax of the Chunin exams, whatever. The thing is, when Sasuke is chasing after Gaara, after Sasuke wounded Gaara in the arena, after he Chidori'd him, Gaara's being taken away by Temari and Kankuro, and Sasuke's trying to catch up to them, so Temari stays behind so that Kankuro can get away from Sasuke as fast as he can while he's carrying Gaara, and Temari's goal there is to delay Sasuke so that obviously he can reach Gaara before Gaara gets a little bit better so he can wake up and destroy the village with Shukaku. So Sasuke and Temari actually fight against each other in the middle of the forest, and the fight is actually kind of neat. They use some pretty cool strategies against each other. I mean, Sasuke kind of wins the fight with a substitution jutsu, which I don't like at all because substitution jutsu is stupid, but it was pretty fun to see those two characters fighting, even though it wasn't very long. The fight lasts for 5 minutes, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of the best fights in this list, because it doesn't drag the pacing out too much. And that fight just honestly feels like it just happened in the manga as well, because it feels kind of natural in the anime as you watch it, but it doesn't happen in the manga whatsoever. So much so that whenever Sasuke reaches Kankuro and Gaara, Tenten reaches them at the same time pretty much. And that's when Shino gets to them, so Shino fights Kankuro and then Temari grabs Gaara and runs away so that Sasuke has to keep on running away after them. Of course, Kankuro's intention was to stall Sasuke so that Gaara could wake up just like Temari was before, but now Shino arrived, so Sasuke can go after Gaara and Temari. In the manga, however, the Temari vs Sasuke fight never happens. Sasuke just catches up to Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara, and Shino arrives at the same time. So Shino lets Sasuke go after Gaara and Temari, but they never really fight, Sasuke and Temari, that is. You can see that the fight didn't add anything to the narrative because Temari catches up to Sasuke at the same time, and it just feels like the fight had no purpose in the narrative, which it didn't, because it's a filler fight. Now the next entry, the fourth entry on this list, is not exactly a fight, rather it's several fights, because it's an entire arc. And a lot of people don't know that this arc is filler. Some people actually really like this arc. I am not a big fan. It's not the worst filler arc, but it's nothing great. And it's going to be the Gurren arc, the Crystal Lady, when they go to whatever to capture the Three Tails. And there's that boy that was the Crystal Lady, and the Crystal Lady is with Orochimaru and things like that. That arc, it never happens in the manga. It's a filler arc. If you like that arc, fine. I don't, but just so you know, that arc is not part of the canon. So all those fights, those Gurren fights and whatnot, they are not canon fights, which you may have thought they were, I don't know. Moving on to the fifth entry of this list, we get Suigetsu vs Kisame. Now, as Sasuke and Team Heavy are heading towards Itachi's location so that Sasuke can finally fight against Itachi and take his revenge, Kisame is ordered by Itachi to stop Team Heavy and just let Sasuke pass on so that Sasuke can fight against Itachi by himself. In the anime, Kisame and Suigetsu are like, oh, we kind of know each other, right? Oh yeah, we do know each other, we're from the same village. And Suigetsu proposes a little sparring session to Kisame, which he accepts. They just kind of trade sword blows, the two swordsmen of the mist, and Kisame drains some chakra from Suigetsu because that's his ability. It's not an overly long fight, it doesn't tank the pacing too much, but this fight doesn't really happen in the manga. Sure, they imply they're going to do it in the manga, but we never actually see Suigetsu and Kisame trading blows. It's one of those things that you just figure, oh yeah, that certainly happened. We just don't get to see it because it's not terribly relevant for the narrative and anything else, but because the anime always needs something to pad the runtime, they are going to include this fight. Obviously, why wouldn't they? Number 6 on this list is going to be Ibiki versus the Animal Path during the Pain arc. In the anime, Ibiki actually has a pretty cool fight against the Animal Path. I enjoy that fight a lot. I think it's a good addition. He uses his summon, the Iron Maiden, to trap some of the summons that the Animal Path uses against him, and Ibiki also summons this weird torture chamber that he puts the Animal Path into, and he tortures the Animal Path and finds out, okay, this thing, this person, quote-unquote, is not feeling any pain, so it's probably a corpse. And it also feels cold to the touch, so yeah, it's definitely a corpse. It's so weird and freaky. That was a really cool addition. In the manga, the Animal Path, sure, it attacks that central of intelligence in the Leaf Village where they're testing the pain body, but we don't get to see that cool fight between Ibiki and the Animal Path, and Ibiki's a really cool character that barely gets any screen time after the written test of the Chunin exam, so it's a cool addition. I would say probably the best addition of this list. Now, moving on to the War Arc, and there are so many fights in the War Arc that feel like, sure, they should be in the story, because, I mean, they are about pretty important characters and some cool little tensei, but not really. And if I were to pick all the fights in the arc, they were included in the story, they were not in the manga, I'd be here all day. Especially in the first day of the arc, 80% of the fights that you see in the anime are not in the manga. And oddly enough, a couple of fights that are in the manga feel like they are filler when you watch the anime, like the Kingaku fight, and also the Hanzo versus Mifune fight. Those feel like filler, and they are in the manga for some reason. I don't like the first day of the war very much in the manga, and in the anime especially because of the fillers. But I'll be talking about two fights that are actually kinda good in the anime, and they don't feel like they're filler. Because it makes some sense for them to be happening, they obey the narrative. And yeah, it's one of those fights that you feel like, yeah, sure, this happened in the war arc. It makes sense, there were so many different fighters and front lines that we can't possibly see them all in the manga, so if the anime does a couple more, sure, I can take that. The first one is going to be Omoi versus Ameyuri. Omoi, the swordsman from the Cloud Village, and Ameyuri, the 7 ninja swordsman lady, or 7 ninja swords women lady? I don't know. She's the one who uses the fangs and lightning style to fight against Omoi, and he also uses swords and lightning, and it's kind of interesting because Omoi is taking a beating, and Ameyuri is the type of person that likes to play with her food, and that's the reason why she loses. And it's interesting because as she's being sealed, she even says, well, in the next life, I guess I'll eat what I like the best first. So it was kind of interesting, building up on some very minor characters, which is pretty cool. Next, we have Shino versus Torune. Now, I like Shino, and Torune was set up to be an Edo Tensei used by Kabuto because Torune was the Edo Tensei Kabuto brought up when he was explaining how the Edo Tensei jutsu worked to Obito. After Obito kidnapped Fu and Torune after he fought against them before Sasuke fought against Danzo, he regurgitated those two out of the Kamui dimension and told Kabuto to explain how the Edo Tensei worked. After he kills Torune in front of Kabuto's like, okay, bring him back, bro. And Kabuto does so, using Fu's body as a sacrifice, which is kinda gruesome but interesting, so I thought, well, this Torune guy had those nano beetles, which were pretty cool. They actually managed to yank one of Obito's arms off of him. It would be interesting to see more of him, just like it would be interesting to see more of the Aburame clan, but we kinda don't. We never see Torune again in the manga, but at least in the anime he got something. He fights against Shino, which is really cool, you know, the Aburame fight. There's even a little bit of backstory for the both of them, which is, wow, Shino backstory? What is this? A Christmas miracle? Because Shino never gets a backstory. And yeah, Naruto arrives in KCM1 to help Shino out win the fight, which I don't really like. I would have preferred if Shino won the fight by himself, but it's okay. The next fight we have is the Retrieval Team versus the Edo Tensei Sound 4. And a lot of people kind of like this fight, and I don't see why, because it's just a lot of member berries and key jangling in front of you. Oh, remember when they fought against the Sound 4? I guess the only interesting thing to see is how the Retrieval Team evolved over the years and how much more powerful they are compared to the Sound 4 because they fought against them several years ago and now it's a much easier fight for them, but it just completely lacks the impact that the first one had. It's kind of the same thing with the Kakashi vs. Zabuza fight in the arc. The exception is that Kakashi vs. Zabuza actually happened in the manga, and the Sound 4 is never brought back via Edo Tensei in the manga whatsoever. Sure, Kabuto absorbs their DNA and uses their powers in the fight against Sasuke and Itachi, but the Edo Tensei themselves are never brought back. It's just, you know, no extra fight for the anime so that it doesn't catch up to the manga during the war arc, because sure, why not include more filler in the war? Now, another filler fight that's actually not terrible, and that also happens in the war arc, is Yugao versus Hayate Gecko. You know, the guy that was always coughing, that was the proctor for the preliminaries at the Chunin exams, and they got fodderized by Baki pretty much off screen. He fights against his former girlfriend who's sworn to avenge him in the Chunin exams after he died, of course. And honestly, that girl felt like she was gonna get a little bit more development when she was introduced because she had a pretty unique design with the purple hair and all. And she got a relationship and a vendetta against whoever killed Hayate. She never really appears again in the manga whatsoever, except for when she is a guard of the Hokage in the Pain arc, you know, when Tsunade is sending out her chakra to the Leaf Village much healing everybody as Pain's attacking. She is in the guard, you can see because it's purple hair, even though she's wearing the Yambo mask, but that's pretty much it. She never appears again in the manga. At least in the anime, the character gets a little bit of a conclusion, if you can call it that. And she gets that conclusion against Hayate, which I suppose is better than nothing. Hayate is kind of an intriguing character that some people are curious about because the guy was just really sick and then he dies. And the arc they give to Yuga is a little bit contradictory because she's afraid of fighting, she's afraid of picking up a sword anymore, even though she participated in the counterattack during the Orochimaru invasion and she was protecting Tsunade actively as a combatant during the Pain arc. Sure, she didn't fight per se, but she was ready to fight if she had to. And then suddenly in the filler episode of the war arc, oh, I can't fight anymore ever since Hayate got killed. Sure, I avenged him in the Orochimaru arc, but now I just can't, even though we were guarding Tsunade in the Pain arc. A little bit contradictory, but it's a filler episode, the standard of quality isn't exactly very high. Another fight that's actually not in the manga is the Utakata versus Pain fight. Now, technically, this fight happens twice in the anime. Well, first and foremost, for those of you who don't know, the Utakata arc is complete filler, and I absolutely despise this arc. It's so mind-numbingly boring, and it happens during one of the best parts of the story. It just absolutely tanks the pacing of the anime, and I hate that arc. And at the end of the arc, we just see Pain looming in the forest, looking at Utakata and implying, yeah, he's getting captured. We don't actually see the fight even in the anime at that point, but when Naruto and B are fighting against Obito in the Jinchuriki and Utakata kind of appears again as this Edo Tensei being controlled by Obito, we see the fight. Pain versus Utakata and then the version 2 Six Tails, which is actually a pretty cool fight. Pain uses the Six Paths, uses Shino Tensei, all sorts of abilities. He has to pull off some pretty cool combos to defeat the version 2 Six Tails, and the Six Tails takes 3 Pain bodies out that obviously the Naraka path brings back, but still, it did some damage. The fight was overall really damn cool. The problem is that they chose to put that fight whenever Utakata uses his first bubble explosion, and sure, I guess, because in the anime, Naruto had a connection with Utakata because they had an entire filler arc together. So if you want to show how things happen to Utakata, sure, show here, why not? But on top of just the fight, they put so much more stuff, like flashbacks of Utakata with that girl nobody cares about. And then Naruto has this lengthy conversation with Utakata in this weird realm of imagination, whatever. It pretty much takes the entire anime episode and it's really obnoxious. If it was just a fight, Pain versus Utakata / Six Tails, that was fine. That was 3-4 minutes long at most, if even, and it was a very cool looking fight. It's nice to see the other Jinchuriki fighting as well and how they were captured. So if it was just that as a flashback, I would have been fine with it, but adding all the other stuff on top of it just made the episode feel slow and boring, and I always skipped that over whenever I was watching that fight again. And if you compare how things were in the manga, because we didn't even have an Utakata arc in the first place, as soon as Utakata used that bubble jutsu to explode Naruto, I mean, the fight just keeps going. There's no flashback in between those two very brief moments. Naruto never really has a conversation with Utakata, except for when he actually meets all the Jinchuriki for the first time in the manga, all together in that really cool scene, which is a little bit later on in the fight against Obito, and it's a much better scene because it's concise. It's not Naruto talking to Utakata and asking how things were for 5 minutes in the middle of the episode about filler characters I don't even know the names of and I don't care about whatsoever. And there are also so many other filler things in the work, it's kinda crazy. Everything that happens pretty much whenever Madara casts the Infinite Tsukuyomi is filler. I guess you could say the Itachi and Kakashi flashback arcs are not filler because they are from canon light novels, but I don't consider them canon. And the arcs are so lackluster because they skip over so many things. They have to rush through an entire backstory of a character in like a few episodes that it doesn't really make sense. And when it makes sense, it's just rushed, which is the complete opposite problem that the anime has whenever it includes too many filler episodes and filler scenes. The entire Kaguya backstory with Hagoromo and Hamura is all filler. In the manga, sure, we get some snippets here and there, but it's just Black Zetsu retelling the story to Naruto in a few little flashback panels, but the whole story is completely anime original. So yeah, I definitely recommend you to go over a filler list whenever you want to watch Naruto again, so that you don't have to go through all those torturous filler episodes. I really hope one day they adapt Naruto again with better animation, with no fillers and additions that actually improve upon the story and just don't fill up runtime, and also cut Kage and Black Zetsu in the end and just make Madara the final villain. If that happened, Naruto would be the greatest anime of all time. But let me know in the comments if you knew that these fights were actually filler, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and ring those notifications because it helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And it also helps you out, let YouTube know that you want to see my videos again. Watch this other cool Naruto video right here, and thank you so much for watching.